So our story is going to start with the letter that children write to Santa to say that they've been good and what they would like for Christmas. So this is where I need our first volunteer who's going to write their letter to Santa. So let's find someone who wants to write. Do you want to write? Just put 3 things in your name, okay? So it was a family tradition of ours, once we'd written the letter, to send it up the chimney. And I always wondered, as a child, why did the letter not burn when it went up the chimney? And if it did burn, how could Santa read exactly what I'd written and what I'd asked for? So we're going to try and see that actually there was a little something that used to happen before the letter went up the chimney that as a child I was never aware of. So have you finished writing the letter? Okay. It's going to be, well, that will be fine. Just put your name on the bottom. That's fine. Thank you. Okay. So for Christmas this year, Tess would like for Christmas, if we just have a look. Okay. Tess would like for Christmas a chocolate orange and some Lego. So Tess, we're now going to send, or imagine that we're sending your letter up the chimney, and I'm going to ask Stephen to take the letter and explain what happens when the letter goes up the chimney. So why does my letter not burn, Stephen?
Well, I think your parents knew the secret that Santa imparted to them, and they used a special liquid which I'm now going to impregnate this letter with. And just to show you what happens, so I'll just give it a little more of this special liquid, and off we go. We can burn our letter. And it almost survived. So the question is, why does that happen? It did, the paper did just start to char towards the very end. You'll see that in the top right-hand corner there. But most of that flame left the letter unscathed. What I had was a mixture of ethanol, well, alcohol, surgical spirits actually, and water, about a 50-50 mix. And because the alcohol is burning, it's heating up the water is evaporating, and as you know, as water evaporates, it tends to keep things cool. That's exactly what's happening there. That means the letter will survive burning. The fact that the water is there keeps the paper below its ignition temperature, apart from that little black bit in the top corner. The ignition temperature of paper was actually the title of a famous book. Has anyone heard of this book? Fahrenheit 451, indeed. About, 200 degrees centigrade. That's when paper will start to burn. Fahrenheit 451 was a book all about burning books. And so that, Maxine, is why your letter managed to survive its trip up the chimney.
Thank you. Should we give Stephen a round of applause for that? So I'm pleased to know that my letter survived its journey up the chimney, and now it's got to make its way to the North Pole. Now, science can't explain everything. Possibly the Earth's magnetic field allows the letter to make its way there, or maybe Chad and the elves can help it to get there. These letters are combined with huge amounts of data that Santa collects as to the naughty children and the nice children, and we think that this is one of the reasons why Santa lives at the North Pole. The cold temperatures allow those servers, with the vast amounts of data to remain cool, and so Santa can keep those lists going. Now, I forgot to ask Chad when he was here, do the elves actually make the presents, or do the presents just get delivered to the North Pole? But actually, it doesn't really matter, because whether the elves are making the presents and therefore the raw materials are needing to be delivered to the North Pole, or whether actually the presents get delivered, we've come to a bit of a problem. Santa must receive an awful lot of deliveries throughout the year, and we all know some of the common problems associated with this deliveries. This is a delivery I received the other day. It came in a box like this. You're probably very familiar. When I opened the box, I found a lot of packaging and the one small thing that I'd ordered. Now, Stephen, this leaves us with a problem. There's all this packaging in the North Pole. What's Santa going to do with it? Now, I've got one hypothesis. It could be that the North Pole isn't actually covered with snow at all. It's just a massive landfill site covered with the polystyrene. However, to test theories, we then collect evidence. And the evidence we're collecting is that year on year, the size of the North Pole and the ice is actually getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And so this doesn't tie up with the theory, because if it was the polystyrene, every year it'd be getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So there must be another theory as to how Santa deals with all of this packaging. Stephen?
Well, he might actually use what I did to clear my blocked lighter earlier. He might use something like this. This is some acetone that I bought at a local hardware shop. And with acetone, what we can do is we can take some polystyrene packaging and we can fit it into a much smaller space. And I think that is probably I think that could be one of the methods that Santa might use to reduce the volume of packaging that he has to deal with.
Thank you. So, the toys are either made or they're delivered, and it's the job of the elves to wrap and package those presents. Did you know that if each child receives 2 presents from Santa, an average of 80 centimetres of wrapping paper would be used for every child? And that would add up to 1.6 million miles of wrapping paper that he uses every year. That would wrap our Earth up 60 times. Okay? And the next problem with all these presents is, how does Santa store them? Scientists have suggested that if Santa was to store these presents in a warehouse, the warehouse would be about the size of 240,000 double-decker buses. So this leaves us to our next problem. How does Santa transport all of these presents? Now, again, we're coming back to the fact that Santa lives in the North Pole. And Santa can use the fact he lives in the North Pole and these extremely cold temperatures to help him reduce the size of the presents before he puts them in his sack. So, Stephen, how does Santa fit all of the gifts into his sack?
Well, this is what we're suggesting. What I have here is some liquid nitrogen. And now this is very cold. It's minus 200 degrees centigrade or thereabouts. And if I take a present like this and I subject it to this very low temperature, you can see that it's taking up a lot less space. And so I can do it with another one at the same time. And this may be one way that Santa is able to reduce the volume of his presents. The beauty of this is that when it's no longer subjected to that low temperature, they will return to their accustomed shape. So I think this could well be a method that Santa would consider to reduce the volume of the presents that he has to deal with. Just keep this one warming up a bit. There we go. So, Maxine, I think that certainly could be one way that Santa does it.
But Stephen, isn't there a problem associated with cooling things down to this really cold temperature?
I thought you'd bring that one up, Maxine. Yes, there is a problem.
Well, here's my present to you.
Thank you. So kind. Yes, there is indeed a potential pitfall with this. Let's take a flower and we'll see that there are some presents that won't reduce in volume very much. And in fact, this pitfall is already showing itself. And if I give this flower to Maxine.
Thank you. And oh, what a lovely flower. Stephen, what's happened to my flower?
Well, I'm afraid the very low temperatures have made your flower quite brittle. And so Santa would have to be very, very careful with some of the presents to get them to you in one piece.
So that's the next problem for Santa. How is he going to protect these presents and stop them from breaking on their journey round the world? Now, he needs something that's light, he needs something that's flexible, and something that's easily mouldable to the different shapes of the presents. Now, again, as scientists, we have a theory, and the theory comes from one of my favourite different chemicals in science. It's a very simple chemical. It's custard. Now, you might have had the luxury of playing with custard powder or indeed corn flour, which has the same properties, at school. And we're going to have a look at how custard might be used to help Santa protect his presents on their journey around the world. Ooh. And for this, I'm going to need 2 volunteers. I'm just going to go and find a couple of volunteers. Do you want to come down to the front? And do you want to come down as well?
I've got the eggs.
You've got them.
I've got the eggs.
Okay. Now, our 2 volunteers are going to be given a present today of an egg. Okay, that's your present. Thank you. And your one as well. Okay. I'm going to ask you to place your egg into this bag of custard. And you are going to, yours is just in a bag that's full of air.
I'm
going to ask you to stand
just here
on top of the black. Okay. Now, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to hold your presents as high in the air as you possibly can, and do something which I hope you won't do to your presents on Christmas Day, which is to drop them onto the floor. So can you hold them as high as you can into the air, and after 3, you're going to drop them. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Let's have a look at your present over here first, even if you'd like to have a look at that one.
Lovely.
Okay,
Thank you, Maxine. It's broken.
It's broken. But what about this one over here?
I get the job of reaching into the custard and retrieving the egg. Actually, shall we try this one again? Custard magic wasn't custard magic.
It didn't work.
Well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Well, it's now custard powder with extra egg.
Do you think that's going to make it any better?
Quite possibly.
Maybe Santa doesn't use this method after all.
Yes, go for it.
I'm thinking it's quite
go
rubbish.
For it. Just drop it. There we go. Now that sounded a lot more convincing. So, having done this, we've done this test now 4 times?
Yep.
And 3/4 of the presents will survive. Using custard technology. And just to show, I hope this is not one of our hard-boiled eggs. It's not indeed a hard-boiled egg. So.
Okay. Thank you very much for volunteering. Thank you. Got to take a oh. Okay, now as well as custard powder not being great and only protecting 75% of the presents, it's also very messy and sticky. And we think that Santa, as what we're hoping you're starting to think as a super scientist, actually is keeping on top of technology. Now this is a very new material. It's produced by a local company in Cambridge. It's called D3O, and it's based on custard powder. And what happens is, you can see, it's very mouldable material, very flexible, and if you press gently on it, it's very soft. I'm going to pass it around in a minute so you can have a look. But actually, if you hammer very hard on it, it will immediately compact and go hard. And this is being used at the moment in speedway racing for motorcyclists. This is what this is. It's a back protector to protect them if they fall off, and also being used to develop bulletproof vests. So we think that actually maybe Santa has abandoned his use of custard powder and is probably using a material more like this to protect his present. So I'll pass that around so you can have a feel of that. Okay. So the elves are busy working. They're busy wrapping those presents. Did you know it would take a team of Chad and 3,000 other elves working 8 hours a day all year round to wrap all of those presents? But my question is, what's Santa doing during this time? Well, we've heard that possibly he's acting as a superhero and going to help other people around the earth. Or potentially he's having that well-deserved rest after that long period of work for Christmas Eve that actually we reckon he probably spends at least 3 months of the year in some sort of hibernation, possibly fueled by those vast amounts of calories that he consumes on Christmas Eve. However, 3 months in hibernation is not going to do Santa's muscle mass much good. We all know that after long periods of rest, our muscles start to deteriorate. So one of the first things that Santa has to do when he awakes from this hibernation is he has to build back up his muscle mass in preparation for Christmas Eve. Who can tell me what type of food group does Santa need to eat in order to build up his muscle mass? Standing up with your hat on. He does, excellent. He needs to eat lots of protein in order to build up those muscles ready for his journey on Christmas Eve. Can I ask you to pass that one along there? Thank you. So those of you who are Mr. Men fans will know that a great source of protein is actually what? What does Mr. Strong eat to build up his muscles? He eats some eggs. And so our next question that we come up with is, how indeed does Santa like to cook his eggs? Now, I know how I like to cook my eggs, but Stephen has got another theory as to how Santa likes to cook his eggs.
I'll give you an egg there, and I have some low-calorie cooking oil here. It's called liquid nitrogen. And because Santa is living in this cold place and he's keeping his servers cold with refrigeration, and he's shrinking his presents, this gives a whole new meaning to the term shrink wrapping. He's shrinking his presents with liquid nitrogen. He could also cook his eggs with liquid nitrogen. And so while Maxine is heating up her frying pan, you see, I don't even need the traditional heat source. I can simply put my egg on liquid nitrogen. And we'll see what the difference is.
So I'm opting for the more traditional method of frying an egg, using heat and some oil.
And my low-calorie cooking oil is doing its magic. You can see the steam that's coming off here. That's actually the water vapor in the air, because the liquid nitrogen is so cold and it's boiling, so it's still able to cool the water vapor in the air to make it that steam. Oh, that looks really nice. Nearly as nice as mine.
Mine's busy bubbling away.
Oh, so's mine. See, and then that's what I get. A nice fried egg. You better take yours to the visualizer.
I'm not going to tip mine up, but I will show you. I think most of you are aware of what a fried egg looks like. Okay, so there's mine. Looking very similar, but using it. Thank you. Okay. Now, is that good enough to eat, Stephen, the fried egg there?
Well, if you did eat it in this condition, it's a sort of fried egg icicle, and you would burn your tongue because it's very, very cold. If you waited for it to warm up a little to eat, then you'd find it was actually raw. So, yes, as long as Father Christmas isn't hidebound with health and safety regulations regarding raw eggs, then he would be able to eat that. But what Maxine has done, by heating her egg up, she's changed the shape of the proteins in it. So instead of being the shape that they are when in a raw egg, they've now changed shape, and they will stay in that shape. What I've done by cooling it down, I've changed the protein shape as well, but they're able to change back. So when the egg warms up, and we'll try and show you that later, when the egg warms up again, it will become a normal egg, and I could take it home and make a sponge cake with it.
Thank you. Now, I don't suppose there's many of you who've ever questioned how Santa likes his eggs cooked, but I suspect a lot of you have wondered, why is it that Santa is so fat? His main job is to get himself down chimneys and back up chimneys on Christmas Eve. And logic would tell us that actually to do that, you'd want to be a very slender proportion. So there must be a reason why Santa is carrying those few extra pounds. And we're going to do a demonstration to hopefully suggest to you why it is that Santa is so fat. So again, I'm going to ask for 3 volunteers this time. I'm going to go to the back because we've had quite a lot of volunteers from the front. Let's go up here. Do you want to come down? If you go down to the front, and let's have some other volunteers here. Do you want to come down? Okay, and you can go down to the front. And with the red stripe on, do you want to come down as well? Okay. Okay, so we're going to give our 3 volunteers a glove to wear, and we've got a bucket of ice cold water, and we're going to ask you to put your hands into the ice cold water and keep it there for as long as you can. As soon as it starts to get really cold and you think you can't keep it in there for any longer, then we would like you to take it out. Okay, don't try and be a superhero and keep it in there far too long, and so you end up going back to your parents with purple fingers. So can I give you this glove here? Okay, it's not a great glove. Okay, I don't suggest that you wear it out. So this young man, what's your name?
James.
James. Okay, James's glove is just a plastic bag here. Okay, what's your name? Reuben. Reuben's going to have a glove, more traditionally associated with gloves, which is made of wool. I am going to put a plastic bag over the top of it, because if you put it in the water, it will get extremely wet there. And then finally, we've got Poppy. Now, Poppy's glove is going to be made of lard. Okay, so Poppy, this is your glove. Yeah. It's made of lard. Don't worry, there's a plastic bag in the middle. You don't have to put your hand in the lard. Okay, if you hold it closed there. And what we're going to ask you to do is we're going to ask you to put your hand into the cold water and keep it there as long as you can. Don't dip it in so the water goes over your sleeve, okay? Just dip it in so your hand's in there, not your arm as well. Okay, it is heavy. So, do you want to put your hand right down into the lard? That's it. Okay, so if you put your hands into the bucket.
Yep, okay.
Okay.
And another one.
It's not like that. That's a good hand in.
That's it, don't
Okay.
get your sleeve wet.
Right, and while they've got their hand in the bucket, we're going to have a little bit of music, and I'd like you to discuss with the people that you're sitting with, the adults you come in, who do you think is going to be able to keep their hand in the bucket for longest? Okay. Some music. Quite warm.
Santa got stuck up the tree.
chimney, he began to shout. You girls and boys won't get any toys if you don't pull me out. My beard is black, there's soot in my sack, my nose is tickling too. When Santa got stuck up the chimney, achoo, achoo, achoo. When Santa got stuck up the chimney, he began to shout. You girls and boys
Okay, can you see how they're getting on? James, how's it feeling? James, is it feeling a little bit cold? Reuben? Normal. And Poppy? She can't feel anything at all. So we're going to let them...
This could take some time.
We're going to let them battle this out for a little bit more. And while they're doing that, I've got a couple of Christmas jokes for you. Oh, what's happened to the chronometer? Okay, so my first Christmas joke, remember if it feels really cold, take it out. We're not trying to prove another theory, that's what happens to our hand when it gets too cold. Okay, so while we're waiting, are you okay, Jane? Yes. Okay, what did Mrs. Claus say to Santa as she looked up into the sky? I don't know. What did Mrs. Claus say to Santa as she looked up into the sky? It looks like reindeer. I think I won.
Definitely a 7.
And my next joke. Why did Santa put a clock in his sleigh? Did Santa put a clock in his sleigh? I think someone had the answer here. Nearly, because he wanted to see time fly. I'm definitely, where are they? I'm definitely winning that Christmas cracker joke. Okay, let's come back to our volunteers here. How are we getting on there, Jane? I think James is getting more colder, and so I think we're going to remove your hand before it gets too cold. Okay, well done. How are you feeling there, Reuben? Very good. So Reuben's feeling good, and Poppy's feels exactly the same. Okay. So I've got some... Okay, do you want to go? Shall I take your glove off, or would you like to keep that? No, that. It wasn't a very good glove. It didn't keep his hand warm for very long. Yours is keeping nice and warm. Can you feel cold at all in your hands? Kind of. Okay, yours are just in your fingertips, and we're kind of starting to feel cold in there. We're not going to keep their hands in for too much longer because I really don't want it to be a competition of wills. But we'll just give them another couple of minutes and see. We did this on Wednesday with a group of 11-year-olds, and it did last for quite a long time, and it became very much I'm not going to give in first, I'm going to be the one that wins. And we did actually, when one child started to shiver, we suggested that they remove their hands. So I am going to keep an eye on Reuben there and check that that's not what's going to happen to him. So just another couple of facts for you while we're waiting to see. Okay, did you know that Santa consumes 150 billion calories in one night in sherry and milk and pies, cookies on Christmas Eve? No wonder he sleeps for such a long time afterwards and is so fat. So how are we getting on, guys? Fine. Are you ready to take yours out there? No! We might have to move on, Stephen, to our next demonstration. You really cannot feel anything, and yours is a little bit cold. I think, although I'd like to keep it in here all day, I really think we should probably start to take it out. That health and safety will be on to me again. Okay, so we'll take that one out there. It is quite cold, your hand there. It's not too bad, but well done. And Poppy will take yours out. I'm not so worried about yours. There we go, if you take one of those and go back to it. Okay. That's it, well done. Okay, so do you want to say how your hand feels?
It feels pretty much the same as when I put it in.
It feels pretty much the same as when you put it in. So well done, thank you. I'll give you some chocolate there. Thank you very much. So Stephen, what does that demonstration tell us?
Well, we've got 3 types of insulation there. One was the plastic bag, which wasn't very insulating at all. We had the glove, which was a fabric, some sort of wool, I think, maybe a man-made fibre. But what the wool is doing is trapping air close to your hand, and so that air is actually very bad at conducting heat, and so the heat from your hand when you're wearing wool isn't well conducted to the outside, so you don't lose heat and therefore feel cold. But of course, the fat, we see Father Christmas has got lard, we see seals and whales, they have blubber, and they live in these cold climates, and it's an extremely good insulator. In fact, if you take that to its logical conclusion and you just leave people with a lard glove and a wool glove, etc., and you just leave them there in the bucket, the person with the lard glove usually takes their hand out because their hand is getting too hot rather than getting too cold, because it is such a good insulator. So that's why Father Christmas has his layers of blubber.
Thank you. So, our presents are now wrapped and packaged. Santa's ready for his epic journey, and we're going to turn our attention to his chosen mode of transport, a reindeer-pulled sleigh. Rudolph, Dasher, Dancer, and friends are all essential parts of that journey on Christmas Eve. But did you know they're actually female reindeer? Male reindeer lose their antlers in December, so this can't possibly be a team of male reindeer pulling Santa. They're actually female. There's little scientific evidence, however, to suggest that reindeer can indeed fly, although the superhero theory helps that out. So we think in science that possibly Santa gives them a helping hand by using power in his sleigh to help them. So, Stephen, how does Santa power his sleigh?
Well, one way he could do it is using a rocket. And I have, I'm not going to make a rocket here, but I have some materials that he could use in his rocket. And in fact, these are the materials that are going to be used by the Bloodhound supersonic car when it does its attempt on the world land speed record in South Africa next year. I've got here some hydrogen peroxide. Now, hydrogen peroxide is essentially water with some added oxygen. And what I think Santa does is use a fuel like this to power his, or he could use a fuel like this to power a rocket motor. Now, on the supersonic car, it's simply generating oxygen in order to burn another fuel. Here, we could actually use the hydrogen peroxide producing gases to power a sleigh. Now, this is hydrogen peroxide. It's a solution. It's because we're near a chemistry department, I can get a very strong solution of hydrogen peroxide. You can buy it at the chemist, the pharmacist, but it's a lot weaker than this. And Santa would, in fact, use a stronger solution again than I have here. Now, what I've done is added just a little fairy liquid. This is fairy liquid, not elf liquid. And that's because what I want to try to do is produce oxygen. And the fairy liquid will serve to catch the bubbles of oxygen that I produce. And I'm going to make that as fast as I can. So I'm going to need what we call in chemistry a catalyst to make that reaction happen as fast as possible. And my catalyst here is an enzyme. It's the enzyme in yeast. So I've just made a little yeast up here. Some of you probably saw me at the beginning. Just taken some dried yeast. And now I want you, as scientists, to observe this carefully and see if you see any evidence of that oxygen being formed, which should take the form of bubbles. So watch carefully and see if you can see any bubbles being formed. And you can probably see some steam here. That's because this has got very hot very quickly. And this is the sort of thing that Santa could use to power a rocket motor to power a sleigh.
I think that deserves a round of applause.
Yeah.
Okay, so with a rocket-powered sleigh, uplift provided by those antlers on the female reindeer, let's turn our attention to the most famous reindeer of all, Rudolph, or is it Rosie? Now, he's usually depicted, or she, leading the team with a shiny red nose. But why? There are several theories that suggest why Rudolph or Rosie has a red nose. These range from a recurrent cold or a parasitic infection, not really what you want on that journey on Christmas Eve. But there maybe are some other scientific theories that suggest that actually they don't have a red nose at all. It's just that while they are travelling through the air, the nose appears red. So Stephen, why does Rudolph appear to have a red nose?
Well, again, there are a number of things we can suggest for this. One might simply be friction. Rudolph is at the front of the herd, the pack, whatever. He's at the front, and the air rushing past means that there's friction, which warms up his nose, like rubbing two Boy Scouts together to make a fire. You get this friction. Alternatively, though, there is a scientific phenomenon known as redshift. And you might have heard this in terms of astronomy. Galaxies have a redshift, and it's because the galaxies are moving at high speed that the light that comes from those galaxies gets shifted so it appears more red. And Rudolph may be traveling sufficiently fast that the nose appears red because of this effect. And I have a little buzzer here. I hope you can all hear this. It's a particularly annoying buzzer. But I'm going to try to demonstrate this using something called the Doppler effect. So I'm going to set the buzzer going and swing it round. When it's coming towards you, you should hear the buzzer be a slightly higher pitch because those sound waves get squidged together as it's coming towards you. And when it's going away from you, it should sound a slightly lower pitch. It's a bit like an ambulance. When it comes towards you, you hear the nee-naw, nee-naw, and when it goes past you, it goes nee-naw, nee-naw. So let's just try this. I have to do it up the gangway, so if this does fly off the end, I don't hit anybody. I hope you heard a difference in the tone as that whirled round, and that may well be why we see Rudolph's nose is red, because the light has been red shifted.
So in order for this redshift to occur, they have to be travelling at particularly high speeds across the sky. Now, their first destination once leaving the North Pole is Samoa. Did you know that 3 years ago, this little island decided to change their position from one side of the international date line to be the last country in the Earth to have their presents delivered, to the other side of the international date line, and to be the first little island to have their presents delivered? They say it was to make trade with New Zealand easier. I don't actually believe that for a second. Now, Santa visits every single house with children who have been good in the world on Christmas Eve, yet we never see him. Why is it we never see him flying through the sky, or we see his sleigh parked on the rooftops? Again, we've got several theories as to how this might happen. The first I like to picture a bit like that first scene in the first Harry Potter movie, where Dumbledore walks down the road using his deluminator to turn off the lights. But that's magic, and we're saying that actually Santa is a scientist and is going to use scientific theories. So we've got another two theories to show you to suggest how Santa might always appear to be invisible. So Stephen, what's the first one?
Well, what I've done is set some lights, put some lights on, and what I'm going to try to do is use some science to put them out. You can see, maybe we could bring the lights down a little so the candles are more obvious. What I have here is simply some baking soda, and I have some vinegar. Now, if I mix the vinegar and the baking soda, I should make carbon dioxide, and if I can fill my trough with carbon dioxide, I can, I hope, put out some, at least, of the candles.
So Stephen, are you pouring the vinegar onto the candles to
No,
put
I'm
them out?
not pouring the vinegar on. I'm simply pouring carbon dioxide on there because carbon dioxide turns out to be denser than air, and it comes out of my jug over the candles. So there's no liquid in this case. It is merely the gas. Oh, a few more bubbles. There we go. So it's perfect. The trough. The trough remains perfectly dry. Don't know if the cameraman can see that. All the stains in there are the results of, actually, I could do this and show you. The trough is perfectly dry, but, and the candles were put out by the fact that the carbon dioxide was displacing the air. With no more air, the candles can't burn.
And I think the carbon dioxide could come from the reindeer who are travelling at high speeds in very low levels of oxygen, lots of anaerobic respiration going on, producing very high levels of carbon dioxide to put those lights out. But there's a problem. This method may have been useful to Santa 100 or so years ago when the lights on our street were made from fire, but actually it's not going to work these days with electric lighting. So we think that not only does Santa need to be a great scientist, but he needs to be a scientist who's keeping on top of the latest technology and making changes according to that. So we've got another theory as to how Santa might appear to be invisible. And actually, what we're going to suggest to you is that Santa's sleigh has been in this room all the time. Has anyone seen it? No. Well, let's have a look. So I'd like 2 volunteers for this one. Do you want to volunteer here? And do you want to come and volunteer? Come on then. Come on then. Okay. So if I'm going to move this,
No, you're
actually I'm not going to move it. You're going to, can you squeeze around this side? That's it. That's it. Come, if you come around the back here, that's it. So you're going to hold on to this one, and you're going, no, actually I'm going to take this one. You're going to take this one. Okay, in a minute. And can you take this one here? Okay. Now, so this has been in the water. You may have wondered what it's been doing. It's actually attached to nothing at all. I've said water. I shouldn't have said water. We'll explain that in the middle. If you'd like to just look carefully here, if you'd like to pull this one out for me. That's it, pull it out. Okay, did anyone see that? When it was in here? No. So you found a, Stephen, what's this?
A piece of glass.
A piece of glass in here. Thank you very much. Would you like to pull yours out? It's a bit heavy. You might need to hold it about here. That's it. Thank you. And here indeed is Santa's sleigh that's been with us all the time, and none of you have noticed it. So thank you very much, guys. Thank you. Got to take a chocolate. So Stephen, how come this glass sleigh has been with us all the time and no one has spotted it?
Well, what we have in here is a very, very special liquid. That liquid has the same refractive index as the glass sleigh. Now, refractive index is a property that all materials have, all transparent materials have, and it means that light will bend when it gets going through transparent material. You've all put a stick in water and the stick is straight when it's out of the water, but it looks bent when you put it half in. Have you done that? So, and that's the refractive index at work. And what I've done here is that I've concocted a very, very special liquid which has exactly the same refractive index as the sleigh, and when the light goes through the liquid here, and it then goes through the sleigh, it doesn't bend. And so we don't get to see anything in the, we don't see that anything is in there because it hasn't affected the light at all. Now, I'm going to let you into a little secret. Okay, this very, very special liquid is called Johnson's baby oil. And you'll see that it does indeed have practically the same refractive index as all your Pyrex at home.
Okay. Thank you. It's turned off. Okay, so he's landed on our chimney. We can't see him. Next is one of the big questions. How does Santa get down the chimney? Now, films show Santa going down the chimney and the chimney expanding, okay, to fit him down. But as scientists, we know that that indeed isn't what happens. Bricks are solid materials maintain their shape. It can't be changed. So there must be another reason or another theory as to how Santa gets down the chimney. So we'd like to show you how we think Santa might get down the chimney.
Here, have a Santa.
This is my Santa Claus. This time the egg is hard-boiled. Now, I'd like you to imagine that this is the chimney, this is the fireplace at the bottom, and I'm going to light a fire. Okay, so as my fire goes out, what we should see, he doesn't want to go down the chimney, I'm afraid, today. Let's try your method.
You see,
it might be more successful.
Santa
doesn't want to burn his bottom.
No, obviously not.
We'll leave him there and see whether he goes down.
But of course, today, not so many people have the luxury of a real fire, the luxury of that dirt and carting the fuel in, cleaning the chimney. So what I'm going to do is simply heat my room up and let the room cool down. Now this is a slightly gentler operation than with the fire, but you'll see that as the room is cooling down, those gases are contracting, they're taking up less space. What happens is Santa actually gets pushed in by the air pressure from outside. Now I'm going to tell you a little secret. That's my lunch. And I need to get it out of here without shards of glass. Because obviously I could smash the flask, but then it would be a little hazardous to eat. So I'm going to get the egg out using the reverse method. So if you'll bear with me for a moment. Oh. There we go. So I'll put that back in the plastic bag and have it for lunch later. Thank you.
Okay, so one of our Santas is safely down the chimney. Probably much safer to go down just into a cooling room than one that's on fire anyway. So he's down the chimney, he's filled his stockings. Science doesn't really need to answer that. And now we turn our attention to the offerings we leave at the fireplace. Now, traditionally in England, we leave offerings of sherry, mince pies, and carrots. You may think that we leave carrots for the reindeer, and on occasions that is actually true. But sometimes we leave the carrots themselves for Santa to help him. Stephen, why would Santa want to eat some carrots?
Well, what I'm going to show you now is what Santa's stomach ends up looking like after eating too many mince pies. So what I've done here, I've just put a little iodine into this water, and this, I've got some starch. I've made up a solution of starch with some boiling water right at the start, and this represents all the mince pies he's eaten. And so if he eats these mince pies, then after a while, you see his stomach starts to turn a nasty colour. You see that? That says that Santa is having a lot of stomachache, a lot of grief, and with all this up and down the chimney, you know, it's not good for one. So why Santa needs a carrot is because it's a source of vitamin C. And I have some vitamin C here. Just going to take a little bit of that and dissolve it in some water. So this is now the carrot that Santa is eating. This is the stomach. You can see it's actually getting worse as time goes by. And if he eats his carrot, then what happens? That actually clears his stomach up and helps him get down the next chimney.
So maybe leave a carrot or even an orange for Santa this year by the fireplace. Now our story is coming to an end, and there's just one last question to ask, which is, how does Santa get back up the chimney? Now we're going to go back to the offerings at the fireplace, and I hope that you do leave Santa the traditional offerings of the carrot to clear his stomach. But what's the purpose of the mince pie and the sherry, Stephen?
Well, this is the sherry. I'm not using actual sherry, I'm using surgical spirit, but it's an alcohol just the same. And what I'm going to try to show you is how Santa might use that sherry to get back up the chimney. So he's not to drink now. You don't want Santa drunk in charge of a sleigh. He's actually going to use a scientific method to get back up the chimney. So I've put my alcohol, my surgical spirit, Santa's sherry, into this bottle. And this is very much like what happens in your car. You don't burn liquid petrol, you burn petrol vapor. So what I'm doing now is making that alcohol evaporate into my bottle, so I have a mixture of alcohol and of air. And then what I'm going to ask guys at the back to do is to dim the house light so you can see this in its full glory. Actually, no chance of dimming the spotlight, is there? In which case, I'm going to move this out of the spotlight's glare. And what I've done, well, I'm shaking this to get out the last liquid, and then what Santa does is get back up the chimney like that.
Wishing to shatter the illusion of a slightly tipsy Santa driving his sleigh, and actually we feel that there are going to be occasions when Santa really needs that glass of sherry you've left him. There's one last thing that we leave in the fireplace that may just help Santa on that final journey up the chimney.
That is the mince pie, and it has to be a mince pie with icing sugar on the top. None of this iced stuff. Now, that's no good. It needs to have a dusting of icing sugar, because then Santa can do this. Now, I'm not using icing sugar because I have to clear up the stage afterwards, and icing sugar just gets sticky and horrible. So I'm using corn flour, but it's the same principle. And he can use, instead of using the sherry, he can drink his sherry and then use the icing sugar like this. So any lights down that we can, please. And so that's how Santa can use the mince pie as an alternative to get back up the chimney.
Well, that's the end of our story. As scientists, we like to ask lots of questions and come up with theories that we call hypotheses. The next role as a scientist is to go and test these theories and hypotheses, and that's the point where this lecture stopped. The habitat of Santa is yet to be explored by scientists, and so all the ideas we've raised today are our theories, and they're not yet facts, but maybe one day. So I'd just like to say thank you very much, and that's the end of our story.